Hello everyone, it's lovely to be here at Dementia UK's 2021 Summer School to talk about understanding and supporting distress behaviours. I'm Hannah Gardner and I'm an Admiral nurse at the Rare Dementia Support Team at UCL Dementia Research Centre.
Hi, I'm Hayley Cooper and I'm a community nurse, Admiral nurse in Hertfordshire for Carers in Hearts. So I'll be looking at the behaviours from a community perspective.
So today we're going to talk about challenging behaviours from our environment. So we're really going to focus on community and care home environment and how you can manage these conditions in that sort of environment. We're also highlighting COVID. COVID has had an effect on how people manage behaviours in their own home because of services not being available due to the pandemic, not being able to things like day centres, having that extra support that families need. So there's been a high level of distress and stress for families dealing with people with dementia in their own homes and in care homes as well. We're also going to have an aspect of young onset dementia. So dementia doesn't just affect older people. So anyone under the age of 65 who's diagnosed with dementia is known as young onset dementia. And we have Tessa Gutteridge, who's Programme Director of Young Onset Dementia, on our Q&A panel after this session. So if you have any questions, please ask them and she'll be happy to answer any particular questions related to young onset dementia. So we're going to talk about 5 behaviours that you may come across in the community and using scenarios to help you sort of reflect on how to manage them in people's homes and care homes. So the first one we're going to talk about today is anxiety and depression. We all have feelings of anxiety. We know that sense of fear that you can sometimes feel. And this can be normal, but when anxiety actually has an impact on your quality of life and you feel anxious all the time and there's fear of unease and something's going to happen, and it's really important to identify this. So people with dementia are more prone to anxiety and also depression. So depression is a medical condition. It's that sense of fear and poor concentration. It can make the person feel extremely fatigued, and often it's misdiagnosed and people just assume it's the depression. Dementia that's causing a person to be more withdrawn. So, and depression is really important to sort of alert the GP and get the correct medication that you might need. So we've got a scenario here of a person called Ted, who's 75, and he had progressive non-fluent aphasia, and he was really suffering from anxiety and depression, and we supported him via a Zoom call, and he was at home, and we supported him via Zoom, where his daughter was with him as well. And you could really see that he was really anxious. His body language was very tense and he was quite tearful, and you could see there was maybe some depression there. And often he was finding, because his type of dementia affects his ability to express himself and language, he was finding it really challenging to be able to express how he's feeling and tell others of how he felt, and accepting his diagnosis. He had this diagnosis, he had insight into his condition, and that caused a lot of anxiety for him. So it was really looking at the dementia, looking at the anxiety and the depression and how we sort of could help. So I really spoke about going to the GP, getting assessed for depression. And if the GP felt, yep, he was depressed, he was starting antibiotics to help treat that condition and also improve his quality of life and lower that sense of tearfulness and sadness. And sort of improve his sort of mood, and was able to accept his diagnosis if we could treat the depression and maybe make him more willing to do activities, engage with people and social interaction as well. Sometimes when people are depression, they become withdrawn, so it's important that even more so to have medication. And also talking about the situation as well, talking therapy. It's about getting counselling, getting CBT, and also for his situation, it's about getting speech and language therapy involved as well to help him gain tools to be able to communicate with others, express themselves and educate the family about how they can communicate and not always focusing on verbal communication. It's about writing, using pictures to help ease that anxiety. And we also promoted the importance of good exercise and routine to his day and sleep pattern, and this all has a positive effect on your mental well-being as well. If you have structure, you have to have something planned every day. So he spoke to him and his daughter about maybe going for a walk every day to give that structure and to get out in the afternoon, prevent sleeping and feel like he's actually doing something and help with that fatigue. And this often make him stop sleeping in the afternoon and promote better sleep patterns in the evening. And he would feel more refreshed the next day and be able to deal with his condition and day-to-day life as well. We also found out that he loved music. Music was a big part of who he was. He did used to play the trumpet. So we really looked at exploring music to lift mood and engaging with his daughter and bringing back really positive memories and sort of a mood lifter. When you hear a song that's uplifting, or we've all had that experience where it's made us feel better. So we really sort of promoted and bring back music into his life, giving him that interest, giving something that he had an interest in and a focus to help lift him and relieve that anxiety as well. And we really had to sort of educate the family as well, recognising that Ted had had a diagnosis of dementia, and that is devastating, and that can affect your mental health, your well-being. And we spoke about going to that GP and looking for if medication was improving, educating the family on his type of dementia, how it might affect him, and actually for the family to look in his view of what it's like living with that dementia. And that helps Ted know that his family knew what he was going through. And this really helped him deal with the depression and anxiety that he felt. And we did have a follow-up video Zoom call about a month and a half later, and you could see his shoulders, his body language. He felt less anxious and had started on some antidepressants and had seen improvement and had started to feel that a little bit better and able to improve his quality of life. And he was having activities with his family, and as obviously lockdown eased and COVID restrictions are easing, he felt he could go back into the community, didn't feel so isolated, and felt comfortable that his family underknew his situation. Another common behaviour that might challenge is the restlessness and trying to leave the house. This can be really quite challenging for families and quite distressing. And also there's a big risk if someone leaves the house, the safety aspect of that person as well, especially with the busy roads and that sort of aspect. It's really important to think about the causes. So it can be caused by someone being disorientated, so being a bit more tired, maybe not understanding what room they're in and become quite frightened and restless. But also when some people suffer from sundowning, and that's when people with dementia often become more restless in the evenings, or at dusk as it gets darker. That's often because they are more tired, it's darker, not a good light, and feel more restless and not understanding what's going on, feel a bit more restless and frightened and tired. And also pain. People with dementia often misdiagnosed with pain. They can feel it, but might not recognise it as pain. So it's really important that we think about pain. Is this person in pain? Is that why they're restless? They might not say they're in pain, but it's often just trying a paracetamol just to see if that helps settle with someone, and using any pain scales that you might have available, such as Abbey pain scale. We've got a scenario here. Jane, 62, young onset Alzheimer's. She was trying to leave the house. She lived with her husband, and he was finding it really hard to know what to do, how to stop the risks, how to stop her wanting to sort of leave the house. It was becoming a very stressful situation. So we looked at the whole situation. We wanted to really see if there's anything we could do to reduce that desire to leave. So we looked at the front door. There were like coats and bags hanging by the front door. So we ensured that her husband put her bag and a jacket in a cupboard away from the door to stop that desire. We also looked at having a curtain that you could pull across the door so she couldn't actually see the door, and that might help relieve that anxiety and that want to get out the front door. We also looked at what the husband was doing when she was trying to leave the house. He became quite stressed and he'd rush the door, lock it in front of her, and this caused a lot of anxiety for her. So we looked at maybe locking the door when she wasn't around. So if she was in the kitchen, he would just leave quietly, not make a fuss, don't say anything, and just go and lock the door. And he knew that she was safe and it didn't cause her distress because she hadn't seen him physically locking it, and then she wouldn't feel sort of trapped. We also looked at any external support that they could have. So we spoke about referral to occupational therapists to see if they could have anything in the house, such as alarms on the doors. Also looking at tracker devices, things that you can put on phones, and tracking devices that you can put in shoes as well. If someone does leave the house, you could track them and locate them very quickly. Help, that time that they actually left the door. We also looked at the Herbert protocol. So this is a form that you can give to the police when someone with dementia goes missing, and it asks all the questions that the police need to know about that person, and you can fill them in very quickly, and straight away the police have the information that they need. And it just saves that time, that precious time of when that person leaves, and getting that information for the police to locate that person. So it might say what they're wearing, what they look like, all correct questions that the police would need to find that person as quick as possible. And it's a form that you can get off the internet and just fill it in. And it just helps speed that time up for finding that person. Obviously, you have a bigger gap, that person can go further. So it's about filling that form in and giving the information to police to help them. We also looked at activities. Jane's day wasn't very structured. She didn't have a lot of activities involved. And also with the lockdown, it was that the stimulation wasn't there. So we looked at activities to prevent boredom. So we involved her a little bit more in house activities, things like watering the plants, even folding the tea towels as well, and sort of laying the table as well. Even though she may have not got it right, but it was a job for her to do and something to focus on. That really helped improve her confidence and structure and an activity to prevent that boredom. We did go review the situation about a month later, and it had made a difference to her husband and Jane's well-being. Jane had activities in the day. They were going for walks together as well, and the house was safer. They had had referral to occupational therapists, and they spoke about the devices as well. So her husband felt a little bit safer and know that if she did go, there were things to help track her and find her quickly if she did as well. And it just made improved and helped that anxiety that her husband felt, and kept her at home for longer as well. The risks were lower, and they were able to enjoy that positive time together by doing activities to distract her from the restlessness. So I'm just going to hand over to Hayley now.
Hi, thanks, Hannah. So the first behaviour I'm going to talk to you is about hallucinations. So hallucinations are a sensory experience that a person either sees, smells, tastes, feels, or hears that is not real. But you have to remember it is very real to the person that's experiencing that. There can be lots of different reasons why a person with dementia is hallucinating. And sometimes they could have a physical cause, it could have an environmental cause, or certain dementias such as Lewy bodies or Alzheimer's disease are more common and prone to hallucinations. It could also be caused by delirium or medication. So there are lots of different reasons why. So this is the type of scenario that I would get asked in the community quite commonly about when a person with dementia is hallucinating, and how the types of response and how we would respond to that. So in this case, we've got Derek. He's 76 and he's got mid to late stage Alzheimer's disease, and he's responding to visual and auditory hallucinations of another person. Sometimes he argues with this person, sometimes quite badly. So his wife, Jenny, she's becoming quite upset about this, and she's really unsure of what to do and how to manage the situation. So first of all, the first thing is obviously that I would do is start by reassuring the carer in particular that this is common. This is a feature of dementia. Often, sometimes this will be the first time a person has ever seen anyone hallucinating, and to them it can be quite scary, even if at times it's not distressing for the person with dementia itself. So first of all, I think reassuring Jenny that this was normal, that helped settle her a little bit. So then kind of educating her about a little bit of why it's happening. So obviously with the dementia and with the changes in the brain, there's changes in the person's perception, which can result in hallucinations. And sometimes by understanding what's going on and just be helpful just to reassure that person in the situation. So then always have a look at it, the physical. So is there anything physical that's going on that could be contributing to this? A good way of remembering it is the pinch me, which is sometimes used for the delirium as well. So, and that's looking at, is there anything with pain, infection, nutrition, hydration, constipation, medication, or environment that might be happening. I'll always check as well, is the hallucination, is it a sudden onset? Has it happened quite quickly? Or has it been something that's come over a period of time? Often I hear in the community that sometimes when people are prone to urine infections, hallucinations can come on quite suddenly. So normally, and this could be, solved quite easily with some antibiotics and speaking to the GP. So it's always worth checking out these things first of all. But in Derek's case, this wasn't down to anything physical. So next we had a look at the environments, and often there are things in a person's environment that might be contributing. So mirrors are one of the things that can often make things worse. So for example, Derek wasn't recognizing himself in the mirror, so was responding to another person. So just kind of helping to understand that was going on helped. However, if it's getting distressing, by sometimes just removing the mirrors or covering them can help. Also having a look out in the garden. I'm often told about trees when they're moving in the wind or in the bushes, or certainly when it's starting to change to dusk. All these things can often be mistaken for people or animals. So it's worth thinking, are there any changes in the environment? Again, in the house, things like large upright hoovers, they're often mistaken for another person, or coats over chairs. So it's time to remove these items and just change the environment slightly if there is something that might be contributing to that. And then in the next case, so Jenny ended up going along with Derek rather than argue that there wasn't a friend there and it wasn't happening. What she did, we had to go along with it. So she kind of went along with Derek as he was talking to his friend. And at times she offered him a cup of tea and said, "Oh, is your friend all right there as well?" And this helped settle Derek rather than kind of getting him upset and causing more arguments, but often made the situations worse. Then we went on to distract him. So then we would Jenny found that if she could distract him, so that might either be just something simple like taking him into the next room, focusing on a different task, or sometimes they would go out for a walk. This would help to distract him. But what we found after a couple of weeks, the situation settled down. And although the hallucinations didn't go away, Jenny felt that it was much more manageable and that she was able to cope, and that helped the situation. So following on from this, another very common distressing behaviour with dementia is delusions and false beliefs. And these are fixed ideas that are not based on reality, and they often can be quite paranoid or suspicious in their nature. That can be, again, several different causes. So sometimes what's happened, there's a misinterpretation of events. And obviously with the dementia, sometimes people are forgetting what's happening and they're making their own misinterpretation. Can be a physical cause. So it's always worth looking, like we said with hallucinations and delusion, is there something physical that's going on? Sometimes they come about following a change into a routine or changes of caregivers. For example, if an agency has been changed and there's new people coming in. Also, some unfamiliar surroundings and medication. So this is a very, very common scenario. So often in the community, I get asked about when the person with dementia might be accusing somebody of stealing something from them or taking money. So this is an example of this and how I would help manage. So we've got Jill, and she keeps accusing her neighbours of stealing her handbag. She's very suspicious, and this is causing arguments and is distressing to her and her husband. So first of all, I'd start again by lots of reassurance and an explanation of what's happening. So Jill can't remember where she's put her handbag. So what she's doing is making sense out of it by accusing the neighbours of taking it. So, which then obviously Derek's becoming very upset about. So if just by kind of reassuring and explaining that's what's going on can sometimes make the situation a lot better. Don't take it personally and don't argue. So often if the person someone's being accused of stealing something, it's not very nice. So but it's just try not to take it personally and don't argue back. The more you're taking that personally and arguing, the situation becomes a lot worse, and it can often be really upsetting for the person with dementia and often their family members or neighbours in this case. So what we've got then is to explain to family and friends what's happening. So Jill's husband would then explain to the neighbour why she was this, what was going on, that she does suffer from dementia and that this is what's happening. So the neighbours were able to understand a bit more what's going on. And you'd often find that friends and family members will be the same too. They'll often be a lot more understanding once they know. So then we tried to get the husband to validate the feelings and provide explanations without challenging. So what he was doing was saying something along the lines of, don't be so ridiculous, no one's stealing your handbag, which, as you can imagine, was making things a lot worse. So what we got him to do was to try and change it into say, oh gosh, Jill, that must be really distressing that, that you can't find your handbag. Let me help you try and find it. So by doing this, it made Jill feel a lot more supported, and it also helped focus on a solution of trying to find the handbag, which then helped. Then we got a replacement item. So often this can be quite handy if it's something in particular, that in this case, the handbag that's going missing, or sometimes things like glasses, they can be replaced and have spares. So that way, when it does get lost and go missing, there is a replacement there on hand. So which is what happened in this case. We then created a routine, and we got Jill with her husband to put the handbag on a coat hook by the door every time they came in. So as much as they could, then at least this created a routine so that they would know to try and where to look for it. So as in with all these situations, it's just really important, I've found, just to keep calm and don't argue back. And then this usually can settle the situation. So in the end, sometimes the delusions and false beliefs will sometimes go away on their own. So, and in this case, they did settle down. So the next challenging behaviour is anger and aggression. And this can be verbal or it can be physical. And again, this could have several different causes. So some of this could be an unmet need, in particular in the later stages of dementia. Sometimes if a person is becoming frustrated that they can't communicate what they're trying to say, sometimes that can result in anger and aggression. Again, a misinterpretation of events, similar to delusions and hallucinations. Again, unfamiliar environment when there is lots of changes going on. Again, if especially in particular late stages, if the person's not understanding. Sundowning, again, like we spoke about previously, when there's often time which can be kind of early evening time, which can often result in more frustrating, irritable behaviour, or physical causes, and poor communication by the carer and the person with dementia. So this is a scenario which I have had a few times in the community, and this is an example of a transition of care when someone has been living at home and they've moved into a care home. So we've got John, who's 82, has got mixed dementia, and he recently moved to a care home. He's becoming aggressive when his wife visits, and he's accusing her of having an affair. So in this case, you can also see how the anger and aggression is also linked to delusions as well. So what would we do? So first of all, would always be risk assess before anything, risk assess the situation, just make sure no one's in danger. Is this anyone getting hurt? So that's first of all. So then again, so check physical. So in this case, the care staff just made sure that John didn't have anything physical going on. In the community, I often see, so when there is a pain, if there's a pain that's not being managed properly, that can often result in irritability and anger and aggression. And again, once that's managed properly, you often see that settle down. So like with anything, don't argue. So we've got John's wife not to argue back because it was just making the situation worse. And getting her to try and understand what was going on for John. So putting herself in John's shoes. So John had just moved environments. He was now in a new setting. He had new carers coming in. He was in a different routine, and he couldn't understand why she was leaving at the end of the day and not staying with him. So just getting her to understand that was helpful. So then creating a calming environment and routine can often help settle. So in this time, including good exercise, and good sleep patterns, can often be really helpful in managing anger and aggression. Because often if people are tired, or bored, they can often show frustrations. So then we had a look at triggers. Was there anything that was triggering this? So in this case, we noticed that John's wife was visiting at the end of the day. So, and this was a time where he was more confused and he was more tired and he was much more irritable. So this seemed to make the situation worse. So what we did was the visits were moved to a morning time where John was much brighter, he'd had a good night's sleep and he was in a much better mood. This also gave her a chance, if he did become a little bit irritable, she knew that he would be having his lunch soon, and it gave her kind of a chance to leave and distract him, really. So then what we did was she would bring something in, so something in that she could talk to him about. So it created a distraction if he did start to become more angry. So something like she brought some old photos in, or he was really into sports, so she brought some football memorabilia, and this also helped distract him and gave them something nice to connect and link with. So we found after a few weeks, John's behaviour did settle down, and he was much, much less aggressive towards his wife, and she was actually being able to enjoy the visits without becoming distressed. So as with all behaviours, it's always worth remembering what works for one doesn't always work for another, and sometimes there might be lots of different causes and lots of different interventions that you need to try. And of course, sometimes you may need other services if things do start to get worse.
Thank you, Hayley. Those were some really good points. And to summarise our presentation, we just wanted to bring together some key points that you can take away when you're dealing with the families and looking at these 5 challenging behaviours that we discussed, and the scenarios and how you can intervent them in your own sort of families that you may come across. I think the key points are good communication is vital when working with people with dementia. So it's also about verbal and your body language, the way you approach someone at times can actually improve the situation and change their behaviour and put them at ease. So often it's not about the person with dementia, it's actually how we approach the person using our own verbal language, our own body language. Really key that if someone's behaviour does change, to think about pain. Often people with dementia feel pain but might not recognise it. So if someone's behaviour does change, always think pain. And there are assessment tools that you can use to assess someone with dementia who might be in pain. And also it's really important to get physical checks. It could be some underlying health condition, it could be an infection. So it's really important to contact GP and get assessed to make sure there's nothing that's causing someone to be more confused and more challenging and changing their behaviours. Also, by doing this, you're also screening for delirium to make sure all the pinch me that Hayley mentioned are being checked out, and this could be that the person just needs antibiotics and it will help with their behaviour. So it's really important to think delirium as well. And involving the family know the person with dementia better than anyone. They know their likes and dislikes, and often they are the experts of how they care for their loved ones. So it's really important. As Admiral nurses, we work with families, so it's really important to include families when you're dealing with a person with dementia. And often sometimes they don't feel listened to, but they have so much vital information that you can use to help manage someone's behaviour, and looking at someone's past as well, why it might affect their behaviour, which is vital as well. So really important, involve families, empower them to feel that they can help as well. Also the meaning of behaviour, look behind what the person might be doing, looking for those unmet needs. It's not the dementia that makes someone aggression, it's the unmet needs. So it's looking at what has changed this person's behaviour, what might be causing them to be more distressed, and looking at and maybe working with that aspect of it. And also really important, last point, that not all behaviours are distressing for the person with dementia. Often carers find it quite distressing to see someone who might be hallucinating, someone who might be a little bit more restless. But often sometimes behaviours can be comforting for the person with dementia. Hayley said about hallucination, that can sometimes bring comfort if they can see someone. That person doesn't frighten the person with dementia, but it's often the family who find it more challenging dealing with that situation as well. So important to recognise that all behaviours are distressing to the person, and it's about working with the family, working with the person to look at how to manage behaviours that might challenge.